Hi guys, it's me and Luna. This is our Raisin in the Sun presentation.
It is of paramount importance to our understanding of Lorraine Hansberry's play that the younger family is a Black family. So we're not arguing about a main character, we're arguing about this. So some important terms that we thought we should start with are protagonist, since we're arguing that there isn't one. And protagonist is the character who leads the play or whom the play revolves around. We found that in this play there is no specific character who does this. It's more about their shared experiences as African Americans living in Chicago. Systemic racism, which is racism spread through society, taking the form of discrimination in jobs, the criminal justice system, education, and many more aspects that can prevent African Americans from moving forward or achieving their dreams. So it's not necessarily like obvious racism. It's just kind of built into the system, and it doesn't let them achieve as much as white people can, putting in the same amount of effort. Another important term is minority groups, which is groups of people can be defined by like race, gender, religion, and more factors that are singled out and often discriminated against due to their differences. Cultural appropriation is the adoption of customs and characteristics by a group by others, and it's often done by people in majority groups who can't relate to the struggles of the culture being appropriated. White privilege is unquestioned and unearned set of advantages that people have just by not being part of a minority group. They don't have the same challenges as them, even if they're like in the same socioeconomic status. There are challenges that they don't have. And lastly, dream is a typically life-changing goal that one wants to accomplish.
What we're trying to say is that it doesn't really matter who the main character is. The story is more about systemic racism and being inside of this. And the only way that like this play could be somehow like changed would be within another minority group. But for like a completely like heterosexual white male should then take on the role of, let's say, Walter would be incredibly offensive, because this story is about the struggles of minorities within a system that is built to oppress them and keep them from achieving their dreams. Okay, so readers, writers, and texts. Starting off with why the set, the wardrobe, and the dialogue are essential in order to define what it means to be, right, like Black in America, 1960s. We start off with the place that they live in, right? Wariness has, in fact, won in this room. Is the like first introduction we get to the way that the youngers live. They live in a decrepit house, right? Full of like old hopes that have been deferred. And then in terms of wardrobe, we have Asagai like flinging a typical Nigerian dress to Benitha, and exclaiming in awe, using like an African expression for admiration, right? Again, it's this is already like entering into the context of assimilation versus non-assimilation, and African culture within the context of American culture, and about like these opposing battles, right? We have things like Benitha's hair, where she like mutilates her hair in order to assimilate into the white majority culture, right? And so again, things that are essential that this family is like Black. And then we have dialogue with Ruth saying, well, of course I ain't one never been afraid of no crackers, mind you, but well, wasn't there no houses now here, right? The way that the characters speak, there's the dialects are very much purposefully by Lorraine as like African Americans within that time would have spoken. It would almost be cultural appropriation, right, for like a white person to speak like this. So much so that even nowadays you have scandals when like Ariana Grande sings, you know, like a hip hop artist sings rap, because those are traditionally very like Black ways of singing and speaking. And so Lorraine Hansberry utilizes that to make a point. And then in terms of themes, we have the poem itself, right, Harlem by Langston Hughes, and the entire, which it sets the tone for the entire play. And I beg to ask the question, right, whose dreams are deferred? Even if you are white living in a capitalist system, you can be oppressed by the capitalist system, but you are allowed to have dreams, right? Even if those dreams are unhealthy, even if those dreams are like imposed upon you by society, at least you're allowed to have them. So whose dreams are deferred? Mostly minorities living within systems built to oppress them, not white people who have built those systems. Because oppression equals power plus prejudice, and who has power? Well, the majority, right? And when the majority exposes prejudice onto the minority, that's when we see dreams being deferred. And then finally, symbols. I'm gonna feel fine, fine, fine. We have Walter literally like exemplifying all of this within, you know, blackface, which is like the prime example of the minority like accepting their fate, right, and accepting that they're oppressed, and accepting what the majority believes about them. And we cannot see that at all if this cast wasn't African American, if this wasn't a story about a minority. It would be absolutely ludicrous to even try to come up with some sort of way that the white person accepts the oppression that they face, right? That wouldn't make any sort of sense. And time and space, we also need to take into account the cultural background and the time in which this play was supposed to take in, right? Chicago, because this is between, you know, World War II and now in Chicago. In 1920s, there was this horrible race riot throughout the city, where a bunch of white people would like take Black people out of cars, invade their homes, like beat them up, like 50 people were killed, right? And then I searched up nowadays, right, renters in Chicago's Black neighborhoods, because there are still Black neighborhoods due to redlining, are 4 times as likely to face eviction. And so it really hasn't gone away at all, right? It's simply like become more subliminal. Nowadays we have gentrification, right? That's how it's more subliminal, where you have a bunch of white people entering Black neighborhoods because it's getting expensive to live in white neighborhoods, and literally kicking like Black people out actively simply by making the entire area more expensive to live in. And then in book we have, you know, The Welcoming Committee by Lindner, who cannot stop referring to the youngers as you people, and you know, very condescendingly says like, you just can't force people to change their hearts, son, right? Again, very like derogatory, like putting down sort of term. And it's the truth. To this day, there is still racism, there is still systemic racism, and you can't force, you know, the majority to have a change of heart and suddenly like love the minority. And this is essential to this play.
So for intertextuality, we chose to compare The Death of a Salesman. And the two main points of comparison between the two plays is that the two families are in a similar socioeconomic conditions, and the two, like, the characters have similar dreams. So for socioeconomic conditions, both families are seen as poor. You know, Willie can't pay his bills. Travis has to live on a couch. And so we have two families that are poor, and yet the younger's condition is much worse than the Lomans, you know? And so, like, for example, Mama has a plant and she dreams of having a garden, while Willie has his little garden that he planted because he has a house where he could do that. And so this just ties into the idea that, like, even if they're in a similar socioeconomic condition, white people and Black people will have completely different challenges to face. And, like, for example, because of white privilege and because of that systemic racism, there's a lot more that African Americans have to overcome in order to achieve the same things, despite having similar backgrounds. And the idea that we wanted to talk about was that similar dreams, which in both stories there's the theme of like becoming someone important, and like this whole system pushing people down. But the main difference is that in Death of a Salesman, all the characters are allowed to have this dream. You know, Willie can want to become someone, and Happy can want to become someone. They all have kind of this chance to achieve a dream. But in Raisin in the Sun, it seems like for one character to achieve their dreams, others have to give up on them. So, for example, for Walter to get his liquor store, Bonita can't become a doctor. And Ruth, like, just for the whole family to, like, continue functioning, she can't even have a dream. And so, because of this, the American dreams become something only attainable for white people, because despite socioeconomic status, the system works for them and they have more chances to kind of get there. There's less pushing them down. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.